So how do we know what we actually know? I mean, really think about it. It's one of the biggest questions we've ever asked. Is truth found through pure logic? Is it about what we can physically see and touch? Or are there other ways to get to what's real? Today, we're going to dig into the 4 great philosophical answers to that exact question. Where does knowledge really come from?
All right, so before we can even start talking about answers, we have to tackle the big problem. And when it comes to the quest for knowledge, the biggest hurdle has always been doubt. This is what philosophers call skepticism, that really powerful, nagging idea that maybe, just maybe, we can't be 100% certain about anything.
You know, the ancient philosopher Gorgias just laid it all out there. He basically argued, first, nothing truly exists, okay, but even if it did exist, we couldn't possibly know it. And then, the final blow, even if we could know it, there's no way we could ever explain it to another person. I mean, wow, that's the ultimate statement of doubt, and it really sets the stage for this whole entire search for truth.
So that's skepticism in a nutshell. This idea that true, objective knowledge is just out of our reach. It's like we're trapped inside our own heads by our own perceptions. And this one powerful challenge is exactly what has pushed thinkers for centuries to try and find a way out, to build some kind of solid foundation for what we can actually say we know.
So, with this huge challenge of doubt hanging over everything, the history of philosophy basically saw 2 major competing schools of thought rise up to the challenge. They both took on skepticism, but they came at it from completely opposite directions.
And here they are, the 2 heavyweights. On one side, you've got rationalism. These guys argue that real knowledge comes from our mind, from our ability to use reason and logic. And on the other side, you have empiricism, which says, no. All true knowledge has to start with our 5 senses, what we see, hear, and touch in the real world. This is the ultimate showdown, the mind versus the senses.
Okay, so let's kick things off with team rationalism. Their central idea is pretty wild when you think about it. Can we build a complete understanding of the world just by thinking? Let's dive a little deeper into the power of pure reason.
Now, the really crucial point here is that rationalism isn't just about sitting around and thinking. It sees our reason as this incredibly powerful processor. It takes in all this raw data, stuff from our senses, sure, but also our own internal thoughts, and it actively organizes it all to create real, genuine understanding.
And, even within this one camp, there are different flavors. You have the idealist rationalists who believe our minds can grasp truth that go way beyond what our senses tell us. Think about abstract concepts like justice or even pure mathematics. Then you have the realist rationalists who are a bit more grounded. They argue that our reason is still fundamentally connected to the real, physical objects we observe out in the world.
So how does reason actually do all this? Well, according to rationalists, it boils down to 3 main jobs. First, definition. Our reason lets us ask, what even is a democracy? Second, comparison. It helps us spot similarities and differences, like between 2 different pandemics. And third, causality. It lets us figure out what causes what. These 3 tools are pretty much the building blocks of all understanding.
And believe me, this wasn't just some fringe idea. We're talking about some of the biggest names in philosophy here. People like René Descartes, the I think, therefore I am guy, as well as other giants like Spinoza and Hegel. They all put their faith in the sheer power of the human mind to figure out what's true.
But, and there's always a but, right? Pure reason isn't perfect. Critics argue that it can get way too speculative, totally disconnected from the real world. It often depends on these a priori assumptions, basically ideas you're just supposed to accept without any real proof, like the existence of a soul. And let's be honest, our minds don't just think logically, they also make stuff up, they daydream. So if reason alone can lead us down the wrong path, where else can we turn for truth?
And that very question brings us to the other major player in this debate, empiricism. For the empiricists, knowledge doesn't start up in your head. No, it starts with your feet on the ground and your eyes wide open.
The core idea of empiricism is actually beautifully simple. Knowledge is limited to what we can directly observe and experience. If you can't see it, taste it, touch it, or test it, you can't truly know it. The mind at birth, it's a blank slate, an empty page, and experience is the ink that writes on it.
And just like with the rationalists, it's not all one-size-fits-all here either. There's a version that relies only on raw sensory input, but we all know our senses can trick us, right? Think of seeing a mirage in the desert. So a more refined version argues that true knowledge comes from making conscious, careful judgments about what our senses are telling us. That's a much more reliable path.
Now this gives us something incredibly powerful. It gives us the scientific method.
This is the empirical cycle in action, right here. You start with an observation, then you use induction to form a theory, then you try to verify it with tests, and finally, you use deduction to evaluate what you found. This cycle is the engine that created our modern world, from medicine all the way to space travel.
Okay, so empiricism sounds pretty solid, but it has this one huge nagging problem. Us, the observer. Is what we're calling truth actually a part of reality itself, or is it just our decision about reality? Our mood, our biases, our past experiences, they all affect our judgment. And this means two scientists could watch the exact same event happen and come to completely different conclusions. So what do we do with that?
So, if pure reason has its flaws, and direct experience has its flaws, what's left? Well, this is where we step outside of that classic debate and look at where some philosophical and religious traditions have turned. They propose two other potential sources of knowledge, ones that they say come from a place beyond our own minds and senses, offering a totally different kind of certainty.
And it's really important to get the distinction between these two. On one hand, you have intuition. This is described as a personal, divine insight. The source material talks about a kind of knowledge gained without any formal learning, almost like a sudden flash of understanding given to a specific person. Then you have revelation. This is presented as a public message from a divine source, given through prophets to guide all of humanity. So one is very personal, and the other is meant to be universal.
Now, in this view, the idea isn't that revelation replaces reason or science. Not at all. It's more like it's supposed to guide them. The thinking goes that this divine guidance directs a person's heart and their reason. That guided reason then makes observations and gains experience, which leads to knowledge, and eventually that can lead to rigorous, tested scientific knowledge. It's an integrated model where faith and reason are meant to work together.
Okay, so let's pull all of this together. We've gone through the challenge of doubt, we've looked at reason, we've looked at experience, and we've explored these other paths. And what we're left with are four distinct pillars, four different proposed sources for everything we claim to know.
So here's the final breakdown. Rationalism stands on the pillar of reason and logic. Empiricism stands on the pillar of the five senses. Intuition is built on what's described as a personal divine insight. And finally, revelation is based on a prophetic message meant for everyone. Four different foundations for what we call truth.
And that really brings us to the final and most important question. Because these aren't just abstract ideas for a philosophy class, right? This is about how you actually live your life. When you have to make a really big decision, or when you're just trying to make sense of the world, which of these pillars do you lean on the most? Your own reason? Your personal experience? That gut feeling of intuition? Or a guiding revelation? It's definitely something worth thinking about.